Hi there. My name is Modupe Ehenlaye, and I'm on a mission to inspire you to keep moving forward to surmount whatever obstacle there are on your path to fulfilling your God ordained destiny. We started a couple weeks back looking at the story of three women in the book of Mark, chapter 16. Now, those three women had two obstacles at least that we could identify. But regardless of those obstacles, they moved forward and they were able to fulfill their God ordained destiny. In this week's story, we'll be looking at Naomi. Naomi is the often overlooked silent heroine in the book of Ruth. We're introduced to Naomi in the book of Ruth, chapter 1. Herself and her husband Elimelech set out for Moab, leaving Bethlehem because there was famine in Bethlehem. Upon getting to Moab, not long afterwards, Elimelech died. Naomi became a widow. At this point, her two sons had gotten married to Moabite women. One was named Ruth and the other Orpah. Now, after about 10 years of arriving in Moab, her two sons died. Such tragedy. How do you possibly move forward in the face of such tragic circumstances? But here's what we learn from Naomi. And so in verse 6 of chapter 1, it says, Naomi heard that the Lord had visited Bethlehem and was providing food for the people of Bethlehem. You see, she was open-minded, and that's the first step we need to take when we're faced with an obstacle. We need to be open-minded in order to surmount obstacles. Being open-minded allows for us to hear about opportunities and take advantage of such opportunities. Because Naomi was open-minded, she was able to hear about what the Lord was doing in her hometown of Bethlehem. And that led her to being able to prepare. That was the next step she took. She prepared. And when you face an obstacle, you need to prepare. You cannot want to surmount an obstacle without preparation. And what that preparation would look like will differ or will look different from one person to the other, from one situation to another. But preparation is key to facing an obstacle. And that preparation led to her resolve. In verse 6, she says, she and her daughters-in-laws prepared to return home from Moab. And in verse 7, she says, with her two daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living and set out on the road that will take them back to the land of Judah. That's the next step we need to take. We need to take that step back. We need to be ready to go back. And sometimes pride stops us in our tracks. Pride stops us from taking that step back because we start to think, well, people would laugh at us. People will say we have gone this far and we achieved nothing. And actually, Naomi actually had those thoughts. But you see, it didn't stop her from taking that step back. And sometimes that's all we need to take. We need to take that steps backwards, back to our drawing board, back to our advisors, to our strategists, back to God in prayer to seek His face. But don't let pride ever stop you from going back, because sometimes the step back is the one that takes us forward. The next step we need to take is do not allow disappointment to get in your way. Don't take disappointments personal. You see, although Naomi was the one that asked her two daughters-in-law to go back to their people after their husbands died, she wasn't half expecting that both of them would leave, or at least one of them would leave. And so we saw how that affected her later on in verse 18. Orpah, her daughter-in-law, left her in verse 14. And you see, Naomi was not ready for another heartbreak when Ruth leaves. So she asked Ruth, go, do not stay. Go, Ruth, leave. But Ruth was adamant and determined to stay with her mother-in-law. And so in verse 18, Naomi gave up and she stopped urging Ruth to leave. Taking people leaving us or leaving our relationship personal could affect future relationships. If Naomi had taken that personal, it could have robbed her of the relationship she later enjoyed with Ruth, because she would have insisted on Ruth leaving. When people leave you, do not take it personal. Thank God for the times you shared together. Wish them well and let them be on their way. You need to understand that they are on their own journey as well, and each have a different path. You have a different path and they have a different path. And sometimes your path doesn't lead in the same direction. So you need to let them go and wish them well and don't take their living personal. We need to treasure who we are, the next step. You see, this was very critical. Naomi almost allowed circumstances to define who she was or whose she was. When she got to Bethlehem, the women of Bethlehem came out to welcome herself and Ruth. "Welcome home, Naomi." And Naomi said, "Do not call me Naomi," which means pleasant, but call me bitter, or call me Mara, which means bitter, because the Lord has dealt bitterly with me. But you see, my friend, circumstances should not define who you are. But what can define it, though, is the action you take. And that's so true even in our Christian faith, isn't it? Circumstances of sin, when you're in sin, you're a sinner. It's not that identity hasn't changed. What changes that identity is the action you take when you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. So circumstances should not define you. Let the actions you take start to define you. So you need to take positive actions in moving forward today. The last step we need to learn from Naomi is that she did not procrastinate. She left Moab immediately, because Bible tells us in verse 22 of chapter 1 that Naomi and Ruth arrived in Bethlehem just as the barley harvest was beginning. And if you're familiar with the story of Ruth, you know that she met Boaz in the field because she went to glean grains behind the harvesters in Boaz's field. So if Naomi had procrastinated and stayed back in Moab out of pride because she was too ashamed to go back empty-handed to Bethlehem, or out of pride because she felt, well, people might think I'm incompetent, or people might think there was something wrong with me. How am I coming back empty-handed? This could look differently in your business. Perhaps you started a business and you put in all your capital into the business. And after about a few years, you've seen nothing. But then pride stops you from going back to ask for help, or going back to seek for advice, or even going back to the drawing board to say, this has not worked. What else would work? Don't become the obstacle to your own progress. Going back sometimes can be the step you need to take in order to move forward. And so what we learned from the story of Naomi is that in order to face that obstacle, whatever the obstacle looks like, we need to be open-minded. We need to prepare and resolve to go back. We need not to allow disappointments become personal. We need to treasure ourselves every step of the way. And we need to take the action today to move forward. Do not procrastinate. In the next couple weeks, I'll be showcasing individuals from various walks of life and various professions who will share with us some of the obstacles they faced in their personal lives and in their professional lives and in their careers, and how they were able to surmount those obstacles. Stay tuned. Stay safe. Know that you're very much loved. God bless you and see you next week. Bye now.